Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're going to take a look at a cold case that was just recently solved because of new discovered evidence from 1974. Thank you for joining me today. Fort Worth, Texas. Fort Worth Police Department on Tuesday announced an arrest in a cold case that has remained unsolved for nearly a half of a century. Police said Glenn Samuel McClurry was in custody Tuesday in connection with the 1974 murder of Carla Walker, who was 17 years old at the time of her abduction. Held captive and eventually she was murdered. Jail records show McCurley was held in the Tarrant County Jail on charges of murder and bond set at $100,000. Investigators said the abductor snatched the young girl from the passenger seat of her boyfriend's car while parked in a bowling alley when they were about to go on an evening date and bowling and video games. Her boyfriend told police that he was hit over the head and knocked unconscious. When he woke up, he said Walker was gone. He said he briefly saw a man with a cowboy hat and brandishing a pistol, but that's all he could remember. He never saw a vehicle that actually she was removed from his vehicle too. Walker's body was found dumped in a culvert near Benbrook Lake 3 days later. Police said she was beaten, raped, strangled, tortured, alive for 2 days after her disappearance. The medical examiner also ruled that the killer injected her with morphine. The case gained new attention and interest of March of 2019 after detectives discovered a letter related to the murder and shared it on social media. They reached out to Associated Press reporters, and ABC5 profiled the murder in 2017 during a series of cold case reports. The reporter, who is still with the local Channel 5 affiliate, responded back immediately to the police department and asked what new evidence had just recently been discovered. After new detectives were put on the case, the files that belonged to a person who was working as a cold case agent were discovered. In that contained an anonymous letter that was left for the police department with the name of the individual who was believed to have committed the murder, Glenn Samuel McClurry, and what date and description of additional information that would only be known to someone who either took part in the case or had actual first-hand knowledge from the individual who did it. This person who left the anonymous letter, the police want to make sure, absolutely are sure, if this person is still alive today, are in no way in any trouble at all. They want to thank that person. They want to know if there's any other details that they may remember that may help put away McClurry for this crime. Bonus fact. After reviewing the notes that the police department recently rediscovered in this case, they also learned that there may be articles of clothing that are still in storage of the victims that may be tested for DNA. Evidence that had never been tested before that has been locked away in the Fort Worth Police Department vault all these years. But now, finally, with the hope of reversed genealogical lookup in DNA, along with this note, and the family finally has a way to put a closure to all this after all these years. 1974, and finally solved in 2020. Thank you for joining me today.
I've sat in this parking lot many Code Nights on.
45 years is a long time to wonder.
Where, when, why, how come?
What happened to someone you love?
For her, I just want it done. I want it closed.
Carla Walker was just 17 the night she and her boyfriend parked outside of a West Fort Worth bowling alley.
Then the passenger door flew open and a guy leaned down with a cowboy hat and a gun and grabbed Carla and started pulling her out.
Her boyfriend was knocked unconscious, and when he came to, Carla was gone. Her body found 3 days later in a culvert, beaten, raped, and strangled.
I'll never forget the sadness and grief my mom had. I would always whisper into her ear that we're going to find who did this to Carla.
Now, a whisper from the past could bring long-sought answers.
Trying to find who wrote this letter. And
the letter was written in 1974 and rediscovered when new detectives took over the case. It lists a suspect name police have blanked out.
Kill Carla Walker in Benbrook. Yes, it is hard to say, but it is true.
Was he talked to back then for her? And what came of that?
Investigators won't say any more, but found it important enough to go public.
You know, we have social media. We have more exposure now than we ever did before, right?
Right.
He said something to somebody. Somebody's going to recognize that type of thought process in writing, and that's all we need is a phone call.
A family that still feels deep loss.
You got that missing part.
Praying for justice, long overdue.
We'll get resolution either in this life or in a better place.